Have you ever craved a cake so light, so citrusy, and so irresistibly moist that just one bite transports you to sunshine-filled days? Well, today I'm bringing that to life with my heavenly lemon Bundt cake. I love making this cake because it's bursting with fresh lemon flavor, topped with a tangy lemon glaze, and finished with delicate lemon zest, making it the ultimate dessert for Easter, spring gatherings, or anytime I need a little brightness in my day. Let's get started. And don't worry, I'll keep this easy. No advanced degree in pastry arts required. Before I dive in, I make sure I have everything ready to go. I always measure out all my ingredients in advance. Trust me, it makes baking so much smoother. No one wants a flour explosion in the middle of baking, and I've learned that the hard way. I will start by preparing the lemon juice and zest. First, I grab 2 fresh lemons and wash them thoroughly. Then, using a zester, I carefully scrape off the outer layer of the peel directly over my large mixing bowl, making sure to avoid the bitter white pith so that all that fresh lemon zest falls right in where I'll be mixing the batter. Lately, I've been using disposable vinyl gloves to protect my hands while zesting, because lemon zest can be surprisingly harsh on the skin. The tiny, essential oil-filled pockets in the peel can cause irritation, and I find that gloves help keep my hands from drying out or getting that lingering citrus smell for hours. Let me tell you a little story about my Bundt cake journey. It didn't start with a beautifully golden, perfectly released, moist, and delicious masterpiece. Nope, it started with failure. Lots of it. The first few times I was full of confidence. How hard can it be? I thought. Spoiler alert, very. The cakes either stuck to the pan like they had signed a lifetime contract, crumbled into sad little piles, or turned out so dry that even a gallon of coffee couldn't save them. But did I give up? Number. Instead, I became a one-person Bundt cake factory, cranking out batch after batch, determined to get it right. And my family and friends? Well, let's just say they had no choice but to eat my disasters. For weeks, they were like force-fed Bundt cake. Some underbaked, some overbaked, and a few that could probably be classified as modern art. I could see the fear in their eyes every time I said, "Hey, I baked another one." But after all that trial and error, I finally cracked the code. I figured out the tricks to getting a perfect Bundt cake every single time. And lucky for you, I'm here to share everything I learned so you don't have to put your friends and family through the same sweet torture. So let's do this. No stuck cakes, no dry disasters, just perfect Bundt cakes from now on. After I finish zesting, I measure the zest into smaller bowls to keep things organized. I need 2 tablespoons of lemon zest for the dough to enhance its bright citrus flavor. And I set aside the rest for garnishing to add a fresh aromatic finish to the cake. Once I have the zest, I cut the lemons in half and squeeze out the juice over a glass bowl using a citrus juicer or just my hands, making sure to strain out any seeds. Using a glass bowl allows me to see exactly how much juice I have while keeping cleanup simple. Now, my fresh lemon juice and zest are ready to bring that bright citrus flavor to my cake. I am measuring out 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice for the batter and 2 tablespoons for the glaze to ensure the perfect balance of citrus flavor throughout the cake. I will set aside bowls with zest and lemon juice for now, keeping them within reach so I can easily add them to the batter and glaze when needed. This helps maintain efficiency and ensures that every step flows smoothly. Now, it is time to preheat my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 175 degrees Celsius. This ensures even baking and the perfect rise. You don't want a half-baked cake unless I enjoy raw batter for dessert. Hey, I won't judge. I like to start my baking by mixing the dry ingredients first, then incorporating the wet ingredients. This method ensures that the leavening agents and spices are evenly distributed before adding moisture, which helps create a uniform batter. I use this technique all the time because it minimizes clumps and prevents overmixing, which can lead to a dense cake. Of course, if a recipe calls for a different approach, I'll adjust, but this method is my tried and true go-to for consistent, delicious results. I start by measuring out 3 cups of all-purpose flour and adding it into a large mixing bowl. Using a large bowl gives me plenty of room to mix everything without making a mess. Next, I measure half a teaspoon of baking soda and whisk it in. This helps the cake rise evenly and gives it a light texture. Then I add half a teaspoon of salt to enhance the flavors. The salt doesn't make the cake salty, but it balances the sweetness and brings out the citrus notes. To make sure everything is evenly distributed, I whisk the dry ingredients together thoroughly. This step ensures that each bite of the cake has the perfect texture and flavor, without clumps of flour or uneven rising. You can also sift everything through a large sifter if you want a finer, more evenly mixed dry ingredient base. This helps break up any clumps and aerates the flour, resulting in a lighter cake texture. Totally up to you, some people swear by it, while others prefer the classic whisking method. Either way, your cake will still be delicious. Dry ingredients need to be evenly distributed, so I give everything a good whisk. Think of it as my cake's secret handshake, making sure all the ingredients get along before they join the batter. Let me tell you a little story about my Bundt cake journey. It didn't start with a beautifully golden, perfectly released, moist and delicious masterpiece. Nope, it started with failure. Lots of it. The first few times I was full of confidence. How hard can it be? I thought. Spoiler alert, very. The cakes either stuck to the pan like they had signed a lifetime contract, crumbled into sad little piles, or turned out so dry that even a gallon of coffee couldn't save them. But did I give up? Number. Instead, I became a one-person Bundt cake factory, cranking out batch after batch, determined to get it right. And my family and friends? Well, let's just say they had no choice but to eat my disasters. For weeks, they were like force-fed Bundt cake. Some underbaked, some overbaked, and a few that could probably be classified as modern art. I could see the fear in their eyes every time I said, "Hey, I baked another one. But after all that trial and error, I finally cracked the code. I figured out the tricks to getting a perfect bundt cake every single time. And lucky for you, I'm here to share everything I learned so you don't have to put your friends and family through the same sweet torture. So let's do this. No stuck cakes, no dry disasters, just perfect bundt cakes from now on. Now, I move on to my batter by measuring out 1 cup of unsalted butter and making sure it's at room temperature for easy mixing. I place it into a large mixing bowl and let it sit while I gather the rest of my ingredients. This step is crucial because softened butter blends effortlessly with sugar, creating a smooth, airy texture that makes the cake soft and tender. Plus, let's be honest, trying to mix cold, rock-hard butter is like an upper body workout I didn't sign up for. Next, I add 2 1/4 cups of sugar gradually, mixing continuously until the mixture becomes light and fluffy. This process aerates the butter, creating a smooth texture that results in a soft and tender cake. This process takes about 3 to 5 minutes, and it's essential for creating that delicate, tender crumb I love. Think of it as a mini arm workout before dessert. Little tip from me, keep an eye on your room temperature. The optimal temperature for baking is around 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 to 22 degrees Celsius. Basically, the sweet spot where butter behaves and doesn't throw a tantrum. If your kitchen is too cool, the butter will harden faster than my patience on a Monday morning, making it difficult to mix properly. If needed, let the butter sit at room temperature for about 30 minutes before using, or cut it into smaller pieces to soften faster, because nobody has time to wrestle with rock-hard butter. If you prefer to use your kitchen stand mixer, go for it. It will make this job way easier. And let's be honest, who doesn't love a little hands-free mixing? I use my kitchen mixer most of the time because I'd rather let a machine do the heavy lifting while I sip my coffee and pretend I'm on a baking show. And if you're feeling adventurous, you can always scale down your equipment. But let's not make life harder than it needs to be. to bring it all together. First, I take the egg mixture and slowly pour 1/3 of it into the creamed butter and sugar. I mix it in gently until just combined. Next, I add 1/3 of the dry ingredients, carefully folding them into the batter to keep it light and airy. I continue alternating, adding another 1/3 of the egg mixture, mixing lightly to avoid overworking the batter. Then I follow up with another 1/3 of the dry ingredients, making sure everything's incorporated without clumping. For the final round, I pour in the remaining egg mixture, stirring gently to maintain a smooth consistency. I finish by adding the last portion of dry ingredients, giving it one final mix until everything is fully combined. This alternating method keeps the batter smooth and prevents overmixing, which can make the cake dense. By gradually incorporating wet and dry ingredients, I ensure that everything blends evenly without overwhelming the batter. It also helps trap air, making the cake lighter and fluffier because nobody wants a brick instead of a bundt. Plus, let's be real, dumping everything in at once would feel like chaos. I like a little order in my keens, my baking, even if my kitchen looks like a powdered sugar explosion. Once the batter is perfectly blended, I'm ready to prep my bundt pan and hope I don't forget to grease it, because nothing's worse than a cake that won't come out. There's nothing worse than a cake sticking to the pan, so I always take an extra minute to properly grease my bundt pan. Seriously, it's heartbreaking when a cake refuses to come out, and I'm left with a crumbled mess. Sometimes I come across eye-catching videos showing new and better ways to grease a bundt pan, and of course, I give them a try. Let's just say that's a whole other video waiting to happen. For now, I'm sticking with my tried and true method. But if you're curious about how those trendy methods turn out, be sure to check out my other video where I put them to the test. First, I measure out 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening and generously coat every nook and cranny of the Bundt pan. Skipping a spot could mean disaster later, and I'm not about to risk my cake clinging on for dear life. From my experience, I like to use metal Bundt cake pans. Sure, there are plenty of fancy silicone ones on the market, and yes, I've fallen for their sleek look and easy storage. But here's what happens. Your Bundt cake doesn't bake evenly, leaving you with a sad, undercooked center and a whole lot of frustration. Why does this happen? Silicone doesn't conduct heat as efficiently as metal, so while the outside looks golden and perfect, the inside is still questioning its life choices. I've tried, I've tested, and let's just say I won't be making that mistake again. If you want to hear all about my misadventures with silicone pans, check out my other video. But for now, I'm sticking with my trusty metal pan, because when it comes to Bundt cakes, reliability wins over aesthetics every time. Next, I grab 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour and sprinkle it evenly over the greased pan. I rotate and tap the pan to make sure the flour covers every surface. Then, I gently shake out the excess flour to prevent clumps from forming on the finished cake. No one wants a patchy flour coating on their beautiful Bundt. This step is absolutely crucial for ensuring a flawless release after baking, because I want a perfect Bundt cake, not a pile of Bundt crumbs. Once my pan is ready, I pour in the batter evenly, making sure it's level so my cake bakes properly. No wonky, lopsided cakes on my watch. Into the oven it goes. I bake my Bundt cake at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, 163 degrees Celsius, for 65 to 70 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, let me tell you, it took me way too many failed cakes to realize how much oven placement actually matters. I always put my Bundt pan on the middle rack to make sure it bakes evenly. If it's too low, the bottom turns into a burnt brick. Too high, and the top stays raw, while the rest overbakes. Basically, I have to play a game of find the perfect rack every time. And here's a little life lesson I learned the hard way. Do not open the oven too soon. I know it's tempting. I want to check on my beautiful creation too. But patience is key. Open that door too early, and poof, my cake sinks faster than my motivation at the gym. When that happens, I just call it rustic and pretend it was intentional. Baking at high altitude? Wish me luck. Since I bake at high altitude, above 3,000 feet, 915 meters, things get a little unpredictable. The lower air pressure makes cakes rise too fast, get all puffed up with excitement, and then collapse in a sad, deflated mess. If you've ever had a cake that looked amazing in the oven and then came out looking like a crater, I feel your pain. After plenty of trial and error and forcing my family to eat some very questionable cakes, I figured out a few tricks to make high altitude baking actually work. Increase the oven temp by 15 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. This helps the cake set before it has a chance to collapse. Reduce the baking powder, charge soda, by 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon. Too much lift, too fast. Disaster. Add an extra tablespoon of flour. This helps the structure hold up and not fall apart in my hands. Slightly reduce the sugar and add a bit more liquid by 1 to 2 tablespoons. Keeps the cake from turning into a dry, crumbly mess. Baking at high altitude is basically like baking on expert mode. It took me a while to figure out, but now that I've cracked the code, I actually get excited to bake up here. Meanwhile, while my cake bakes, I get my cake syrup ready, doing my best not to check the oven every 5 minutes, like an impatient kid waiting for cookies. The waiting is always the hardest part, but I know that golden, buttery, lemony perfection is totally worth it. Making the cake syrup. This step is a game changer. The syrup infuses the cake with even more lemony goodness, making it extra moist and flavorful. Because why settle for a good cake when I can have an amazing one? In a small saucepan over medium heat, I measure out a 1/4 cup of sugar and pour it in. Next, I add a 1/4 cup of water, giving the sugar just the right amount of liquid to dissolve smoothly. Then I measure 1½ tablespoons of lemon juice and add it to the saucepan, bringing in that signature tangy brightness. I stir the mixture continuously with a silicone spatula until the sugar is fully dissolved, ensuring there are no grainy bits left. I like using a silicone spatula because it scrapes the bottom and sides of the pan effectively, preventing any sugar from sticking and burning. Plus, it's gentle on my cookware and makes cleanup easier. Once done, I remove the saucepan from the heat and let the syrup cool completely. For easy application, I pour the cooled syrup into a squeeze bottle. Makes me feel like a pro. I can pretend I'm on a fancy baking show, gracefully drizzling syrup like a pastry chef. But let's be real, sometimes I'm too impatient for that. If I'm feeling a little extra, or just don't want to clean another bottle, I'll just drizzle it straight from a spoon with the elegance of someone who knows they're about to devour this cake anyway. No rules here, just delicious results. Once my cake is done baking, I let it rest in the pan for 10 minutes. This short wait time is crucial. It allows the cake to firm up slightly, making it easier to release without breaking. I use this time to clean up a bit, or, let's be honest, stare at the cake in anticipation. Next, I place a cooling rack over the top of the pan, making sure it's centered for a smooth flip. With one deep breath and a silent prayer to the baking gods, I quickly but gently turn the pan over. If all goes well, the cake slides out beautifully and I give myself a well-earned pat on the back. But let's be real, sometimes things don't go as planned. If the cake refuses to budge, I take a moment to question all my life choices before tapping the pan lightly on the counter. If that doesn't work, I channel my inner problem solver and carefully run a butter knife around the edges to coax it out. And if that still doesn't work, well, I improvise and call it a rustic kashtake deconstructed dessert and pretend that was the plan all along. Before decorating, I let my Bundt cake cool completely, and I mean completely. This usually takes about 30 to 60 minutes, but trust me, patience is key here. If I try to rush the process, the glaze will slide off like an avalanche, and no one wants a messy, sticky disaster. I like to place the cake on a cooling rack to allow air to circulate evenly, preventing a soggy bottom. If I'm feeling extra cautious or just impatient, I grab a heat thermometer and check that the cake has cooled to around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees Celsius, before proceeding. Skipping this step is a recipe for disaster. Warm cakes and icing just don't mix unless I'm aiming for a modern art masterpiece. So I take a deep breath, resist the urge to rush, and let my cake cool properly before moving on to the fun part, decorating. With the cake fully cooled, I slowly drizzle the cake syrup over the top, letting it soak in. This enhances the lemon flavor and keeps the cake soft and moist. Trust me, this extra step is worth it. If I'm feeling bold, I grab a skewer and poke some holes all over the cake, making sure to reach deep so that every bite gets a little extra syrupy goodness. No one ever complained about too much flavor, right? I like to think of this step as giving the cake a secret stash of lemony goodness. The more little pockets of syrup, the more melt-in-your-mouth magic happens. And if I go a little overboard with the poking, well, let's just call it extra moisture insurance. Now it's time to make the lemon glaze, arguably the best part of the cake. This sweet and tangy topping is what takes the flavor to the next level, adding that perfect citrusy kick. Plus, let's be honest, a Bundt cake without glaze is like a party without music. Something just feels missing. In a medium bowl, I measure out 1 cup of powdered sugar and pour it in, making sure to sift it first to avoid any lumps. No one wants a clumpy glaze. This cake deserves better. Next, I add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, bringing in that bright, tangy flavor that pairs perfectly with the sweetness of the powdered sugar. I always use freshly squeezed lemon juice because, let's be honest, bottled lemon juice just doesn't have the same zing. I grab my whisk and start stirring the mixture together. At first, it may look like a powdered sugar explosion, but with a little patience and some elbow grease, it transforms into a smooth and glossy glaze. I keep whisking until there are no lumps, ensuring a silky consistency that will drizzle beautifully over the cake. If the glaze is too thick, which is what I have here, I add a tiny splash more lemon juice, just enough to loosen it up, but not so much that it runs off the cake like a waterfall. On the other hand, if it's too thin, I mix in a little extra powdered sugar to thicken it up. Adjusting the consistency is key to getting that perfect drizzle effect. If you only have 2 lemons and need more liquid for the glaze, don't panic. You can add 1 tablespoon at a time of either milk or melted butter until you reach the right consistency. Milk will keep the glaze light and smooth, while melted butter will add a rich, glossy finish. Both work like a charm. On now, I drizzle the glaze over my cake, letting it cascade down the sides like a sugary waterfall, slowly coating every curve of the Bundt. I like to take my time with this step, watching the glaze settle into the ridges. It's oddly satisfying, like watching a lava lamp, but way more delicious. Sometimes I get a little carried away and pour on a bit too much. But hey, can you ever have too much glaze? Spoiler, no you cannot. If some pools at the bottom, I just take a spoon and scoop it right back on top, because waste not, want not. In the end, it looks fancy, tastes even better, and makes me feel like a professional pastry chef until I remember I have to do the dishes. finish, I zest 1 fresh lemon over the top of the cake, letting the vibrant specks of citrus create a beautiful contrast against the glaze. Not only does this add a burst of fresh lemon aroma, but it also enhances the flavor, giving each bite a bright and zesty kick. I like to use a fine grater or microplane for this step, making sure to zest only the outermost layer of the peel. The fragrant oils in the zest bring out the citrus essence without any of the bitterness from the white pith. Plus, let's be real. It's also my chance to show off my zesting skills. I like to think of it as the culinary equivalent of a final dramatic flourish before the grand reveal. And there you have it, my perfect lemon bundt cake. A masterpiece of bright citrus flavor, tender crumb, and just the right balance of sweet and tangy. Now the hardest part, deciding whether to admire it for a few more minutes or just dive right in. Made this bundt cake for a party or as a gift, wondering how to transport it without a hassle. Stick around. My next video is all about the secret to perfectly packaging bundt cakes like a pro. This cake is soft, buttery, and packed with bright lemon flavor. Seriously, a total showstopper. I love making it for Easter, Mother's Day, or honestly, just because. It never disappoints. If you're into citrusy desserts, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more delicious recipes. And don't forget to like this video and drop a comment if you try this recipe. I want to know, what's your favorite bundt cake flavor? Happy baking! And hey, if my cake flops, I just call it artisan and serve it with confidence. See you in my next video.